everyone, and welcome back to the Joy-Filled Universe podcast. I am your host, Lisa Ryan, and today we are going to talk about something that I think many of us do, and I know that I certainly do this too, and that happens to be shrinking or marginalizing ourselves. And I have become so keenly aware of this lately, and not just when I'm doing it, but when others are doing it to themselves too, like my coworkers, friends, some folks in my family, and even people that I coach too. And quite honestly, I believe that many of the times that we do it, we don't even know that it's happening. So for the past several weeks, I have been really tuned in. And every time I hear someone do it, or even if I catch myself doing it, I wonder, why do we do this? Why do we play things small, hold back when we know that we are capable of more, saying yes when we really mean no, or dimming our own unique light in this world? If you ask me, I believe that we do this largely because we are looking to make other people feel comfortable, or even for us to feel like we will be accepted and fit in. And the spoiler alert here is the collective energy in this world doesn't benefit from us shrinking ourselves, even if some of us have been conditioned to believe that it does. And you know who else doesn't benefit from this? Us. So that happens to be my very long intro into saying that in today's episode, we are going to talk about what it actually means to shrink ourselves, why we do it, and most importantly, how we can become so aware of it, and coupling that with intention, hopefully we can stop doing it to ourselves altogether. Because I'm here to tell you, none of us were ever meant to live a minimized life. We are meant to live a maximized life. And I am absolutely here for that. And I'm also more than happy to oblige. So, what does it mean when we say shrinking ourselves? Well, from what I have learned, read, seen, and experienced, shrinking ourselves is when we minimize who we are. And most unfortunately, there are tons of ways that we tend to shrink ourselves. And some of the ways that we do this are through hiding or masking our accomplishments, our intelligence, our viewpoints, the clothes that we choose to wear, or just how we choose to look in general, like our hair, makeup, or anything that makes up our appearance. Hiding where we live, the car that we drive, settling for less when we know we want and deserve more. Hiding or putting off our dreams so that people don't laugh at us, or so that we don't leave ourselves open to failure if we try and don't succeed. Not setting boundaries for ourselves, shrugging off compliments to avoid the attention or spotlight that they bring. Declining opportunities because we are afraid, even when our gut tells us to do it. Saying we're sorry when we have done nothing wrong. And even just hiding our most incredible, authentic self because we are afraid of rejection. All of these are examples of how we shrink and marginalize ourselves. And if you didn't notice, we tend to do this not because of how we feel, but largely because of how we believe we will be received by others. We don't want to be judged. We don't want any conflict. We don't want to feel uncomfortable, and we don't want to become less popular. And when we do this enough, our behaviors start to align with our words. And as a result, we will physically make ourselves smaller. We hunch our shoulders. We keep our eyes down and our head low. We cross our arms and our legs, and we will just stay quiet, even if we have something valuable to say. And by doing all of this, we are denying who we truly are. We are suppressing our incredible selves, and we are cheating ourselves of living our incredible human experience. So, if you see any of this in yourself or the people that you appreciate in your life, you might now be wondering, Why do we do this to ourselves? And I'm going to say that I personally don't believe it's a random thing. I think we do it because it's our brain's way of keeping us safe. If you think about it, we have to be courageous, vulnerable, authentic, and confident to show up as our genuine selves. And our incredible brains like to toggle into survival mode because all of that is really putting us out there. And our brain is like, wait a minute, I want us to be safe. So perhaps we can shrink a little bit. And then this way, everyone will accept us and we won't risk any kind of rejection, failure, or any kind of hurt. And many of us will tend to follow that suggestion that our brain makes because at any point in our lives, we have likely learned that it's safer to be quiet, it's safer not to stand out, it's safer not to challenge others. And we could have also been taught things like, be nice, don't make a scene, don't be too over the top. You know how you can be. Don't overwhelm people. And somewhere along the way, all of those lessons were collected and tucked away. And then they eventually turned into a limiting belief that sounds a bit like, I need to be less in order to be liked. However, if we truly think about that, what does that actually cost us in the long run? Because it's not just a limiting belief. It's actually a pattern within us that impacts our entire life if we choose to let it. When we shrink ourselves, we lose connection to our authentic identity. We absolutely build resentment towards others. We feel unseen, unheard, and undervalued. We lose self-confidence and start to question our own self-worth. And we waste our precious time being around the wrong people or in the wrong career or in the wrong environment where we live or in a wrong relationship for that matter. Those are just to name a few. And we can find ourselves getting stuck because we don't take the risk of declaring what we want, accepting opportunities, stepping outside of our comfort zone, taking risks, and ultimately living our lives for us. We all get our own life, everyone. We should not be living our lives for anybody else but us, because everybody else gets to have their own life, just like we get to have ours. And at the end of the day, something that we should not forget is that we teach people how to treat us by how we choose to show up and also how we treat ourselves. So how do we then stop all of this? How do we stop shrinking ourselves? Because we don't just decide one day to snap out of it. Rather, we first have to have the awareness around the fact that we're doing this to ourselves. And from that awareness, we make the intentional decision to grow and expand instead. And some ways that we can do this are like taking up space physically. And I think that we talked about this many episodes ago now when we discussed power poses, which is something that Amy Cuddy made very popular, right? Remember, she talked about like the Superman pose where we open up our chest, shoulders back, hands on our hips, chin up, legs shoulder length apart, and we hold that pose for 2 minutes. This alone is where our body influences our mind and we increase feelings of confidence and we lower our cortisol because we are reducing stress. And as Amy would say, we fake it until we become it. And I translate that as our physiology influences our psychology because these small physical shifts interrupt our self-doubt. And I love this technique because we can truly practice this level of confidence whenever we choose to do so. It only takes 2 minutes. And what's not to love about that? Okay, another one is auditing our language. Let's pay attention to how we speak, right? Take note when we are in conversation. So if we say things like, oh, I think, or, well, or maybe. It can also be when we say, this may not make any sense, but, or even, so that's my 2 cents, even though it's probably way off base. Or worse yet, how about when we just call ourselves off completely? When someone asks us for our input, we end up saying something like, I don't really have anything to add, when in all actuality, we do. All of these phrases dilute our power. So let's start replacing them with words like, here's what I think. I believe this matters because I'd like to share something with everyone. I feel this is important, so please allow me a moment to share. This level of direct clarity is confidence, and it is also saying, I am a part of this discussion and I plan to be a valuable contributor. And our body language and the energy that we give off will all send this very same vibe to all the people that are in the room. And trust me, they're going to feel it. Okay. How about how many of us have found ourselves wanting to please everyone and rarely saying no just to avoid any conflict or fear of not being liked? I know that this is something that I have done, and it's actually something that I still do from time to time. I just don't want to make anyone mad. And I have even gone to parties. I'm telling you this, I have gone to parties with a migraine because I didn't want to upset anyone. So if anyone else can see themselves here, let's try doing something that's called setting up micro boundaries. And what I mean by this is we can say simple things like, nah, I'm not going to be available for that. Or I prefer to do this instead. Or that doesn't work for me. And the real secret behind setting up micro boundaries is we don't need to feel like we have to over-explain ourselves. Yeah, we don't need to give someone a whole essay to justify our needs or preferences. And I used to do this actually at work a handful of years ago. I had a routine where I coupled my running and exercise at the end of my work days. However, when folks were gathering like to go out for happy hour, there were so many times when I felt like I had to go or else I would not be part of the in crowd. And then I would feel like all sorts of grumpy afterwards because rather than burning calories and feeling great because it shook off the stress of the day, which was actually very important to me, I chose to do what was important to everyone else. Yet, I finally found my voice, and although I did go out for happy hour every now and again, because your girl loves a good happy hour, I went out because I wanted to. That's right. I found the confidence to tell my coworkers, I can't go tonight because I already have plans to go for a run. And guess what happened next? Not only did my micro boundary get accepted, but a couple of folks started to join me when I went running. And that turned out to be a ton of fun. And I still have so many great memories from those really awesome after work adventures. So the bottom line here is, do what you want to do and be clear as to why your answer is no. And keep it short and sweet because, like I said, you don't have to justify your desires to anyone else but you. Okay, moving right along. How about we separate rejection from identity? Oh, we can be so worried about someone not choosing us, right? Not agreeing with us or not understanding us. And none of this is a reflection of our worth. It's just a reflection of alignment. And with this awareness, we understand that not everyone is our person and not every room is our room. And that is perfectly okay, just so long as we have this awareness. And instead of shrinking to fit in, we find a better way, or should I say, a more aligned way so that we can expand. And speaking of expanding, how about choosing environments that promote just that within us? If we aren't doing this already, let's start to intentionally surround ourselves with people who celebrate our viewpoints, encourage our growth, and feel safe when we shine. And even better than that, they celebrate us. Now, when we find ourselves in environments where we desperately want to shrink, I love to have my virtual environments ready to go. And what I mean by this is I have about 3 or 4 different group text strings with different bundles of friends. And then I also have a handful of close friends that I message individually. And all of these people are my place, my zones of expansion. So if I'm feeling like I'm in a place where I'm tempted to shrink and I need a little extra boost, I ping my friends and I tell them how I'm feeling. And then my text messages just light up with joy. And without me even asking for it, I'm reminded of all the reasons I'm so special and so unique, and most importantly, so loved. So let's be mindful of our environments, because when we are around the right people, they don't dim our light. Rather, they feel inspired by it. And this can actually be a little bit tricky too, especially if we're in the workplace that is causing us to want to shrink. I have been in this kind of situation too. And you know what I did? I still had friends who worked for the same company, maybe not in my office, but they were close by. So when I had time for lunch, I would go meet them and eat with them, or we would pop in and visit one another during the day. And some days we even used our lunch breaks like to go just for a walk together. All of this gives us a place where we feel supported and respected for who we genuinely are. And when we are in these places, our joy tank is often refueled, which sustains us when we are subjected to environments that can drain our energy. So whether it's virtual or in person, let's find ourselves in environments that support us. And that brings me to the very last tool, which is let's practice visibility. And I'm not saying that we have to go from silent to center stage overnight. Rather, let's just start with speaking up more in meetings or sharing ideas, celebrating one or a few of our wins out loud, and say yes to an opportunity that feels exciting, even though it might also feel a little scary too. All of this will help with building our confidence, and the more that we do it, the more natural our growth will become, and the more unnatural contracting or shrinking will feel for us. So whether we are power posing, being mindful of our language that we use, setting up our micro boundaries, separating rejection from identity, speaking up more and stepping into the spotlight, or even being conscious of our environments, all of this works when we are first and foremost aware, and also when we have the desire to live unapologetically as our most authentic selves. And now, I would be remiss if I did not give all of you a few more examples of where I shifted from a place of marginalizing myself to one of expanding myself. This first example actually happens to be many years ago, and I'll give another one too that's actually very recent. However, the one from long ago was when I was in industry and working in the world of finance. I built pay models for the workforce and often had to negotiate these models in order to determine out-year budgets. Anyway, all of the people that I worked with had very prestigious degrees in finance. I was the only one who, in my interview, and I remember this very vividly, said, "Listen, I don't have a degree in finance, but I'm very good at math, and I know how to do mathematical modeling. And I will truly never know for sure, but I believe that that was one of the things that got me the job. I was confident in who I was and what I knew. So my first negotiation had come along and I was terrified. I went into the room and the opposing side, they just ate me alive. And during that exchange, I did everything small, right? I apologized. I tried not to have any conflict. Rather, I kept on absorbing all of their criticism. I eventually just shut down. My body language became small. I doubted my work. And at the end, I barely kept it together long enough to exit the room, get to the nearest bathroom, and then I just burst out in tears. And so after I had cleaned myself up, I went back to my office. I walked in with my tail between my legs, and while all my coworkers were just like all waiting there to hear all about my success, and all I could do was just beg them to please take this off my plate and to speak to my models the next day on my behalf. However, this group of humans was a really good environment for me because they believed in me. They knew what I was capable of, and they dusted me off and they gave me valuable tips, and they absolutely expected me to head back into the negotiation the very next day. And with that level of confidence, along with the words of encouraging wisdom from all of them, I began to feel more confident too. I knew that I was worthy of being there. I knew that my work was solid. And when I showed up that next day, I kept my posture open. I spoke clearly and unapologetically. I kept my emotions in check. And I stayed in a position of power as I delivered my message. And that day ended very differently because I was received favorably. That negotiation went very well too, by the way. And I gained a lot of respect that day. So much so, I had folks shaking my hand afterwards, thanking me for a productive day. That felt awesome. And I was so grateful for a work environment where my coworkers believed in me and reminded me to believe in myself as well. Okay, now, bringing us all the way forward to nearly present day is an example of me choosing not to be small, which has everything to do with my podcast artwork. Have you noticed that the Joyful Universe podcast artwork no longer has a lovely sunrise? Rather, it is a picture of yours truly. Oh my goodness. I had so many friends and family telling me, why don't you have a picture of yourself on your podcast? Everybody has a picture of themselves. And I knew that. And I also knew that despite the fact that everybody was doing it, I knew that when humans process facial recognition, that builds trust faster. It makes things feel more personal and real. And basically, when people see someone else's face, it creates a level of familiarity and builds a sense of relationship. But if I'm honest, there was a part of me that felt so vulnerable and I was worried about being judged. So I made excuses about why I wasn't getting around to getting the headshots accomplished until finally my boyfriend Michael said to me, "You know what I want for my birthday this year?" Which happens to be in May. He said, "I want you to get some headshots done and to get your picture out there." So that little nudge lit a spark under me. And I thought, you know what? I need to take a bit of my own medicine. I need to show up for all of these folks that tune in every week to listen to me. This is the Joy-Filled Universe after all. So I want to model what I message. And so then I did it. I got some headshots, which I also intend to use on my website, by the way. And voila, the artwork has changed. There I am, your host, Lisa Ryan. And I'll just say, I felt so happy when I posted my picture. I felt really proud. And so many of my friends and family pinged me to say, "Lisa, we love this for you," which made me just feel so good because I took the risk. I showed up as my best self. And speaking of this podcast really quick, I am just going to say that this is even an example of me living with a growth and expansive mindset. Because did you know that as of early 2026, there are about 4.7 million indexed podcasts worldwide. And of that 4.7 million, only about 10% are actively producing shows. 10%! And I'm one of them. I'm putting myself out there because I believe in me. I'm putting myself out there because I have supportive family and friends and even listeners who are my friends too. And I'm putting myself out there because I'm choosing to go big, and I'm choosing to go beyond where so many others usually stop. And so I will be the first to say that shrinking ourselves is definitely a survival mechanism, but it's not the kind that serves us in really great ways. Rather, it deprives us of living our best lives. And really quick, because this just popped into my head, a pitfall that many of us can sometimes endure, or even be someone who does it, is when someone feels the need to knock us down or make us feel small in order to build themselves up. If you pay attention, you will see that this actually happens more than you think, whether it's intentional or not. And to that I say, let's protect ourselves from energy vampires who try to diminish our worth. And remember that the universe is always listening. So whatever energy people are putting out will be attracted to them in kind. And yeah, I think that's a wrap for this week. That's all I've got. I'm looking at my notes. I'm done. So when we feel our minds wanting to take over, right? Maybe let's just strike a power pose and throw in some affirmations while we're doing it. Like, I am safe. I am an incredible co-creator with the universe, and I'm living my most abundant life. Or let's switch up our environment and call or text a friend, or even ask a friend or family member or a fur baby for that matter to go for a walk in nature. Perhaps set up a micro boundary so that we do what we want to do and live how we want to live. And remember, it doesn't require an essay to justify it either. Be simple, be direct, and know that you're doing what you want to do because you're living your best life. And lastly, let's just audit our language and speak from a place of clarity and confidence, because at the end of the day, the person's whose opinion matters most is our own. So let's not change ourselves for the sake of fitting in or marginalizing ourselves to fit the expectation of others, or worse yet, allowing the opinions of others to determine how we live our lives. Because here's a question for you. If we have to be less in order to be accepted, are we really being accepted in the end? Ponder that for a little while. And lastly, here's a quote too, because, it's not a Joy-Filled Universe podcast unless I throw in a few quotes. So there was a concept that I had come across, and it is often attributed to the American author and spiritual teacher, Marianne Williamson. And she says that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And with that kind of awareness, let's change that deepest fear into our deepest strength, because every single one of us is here in our human experience with a purpose, and that purpose and unique light can only shine from us, because there is no one else in this entire planet who is exactly like we are. So rather than dilute that or dim that beautiful, unique light, let's get out there and proudly be who we are today, and also who we are growing into as our future paths unfold. And on that note, I truly hope that you enjoyed this episode and found it to be useful. And if you did, I would absolutely love it if you could take just a few seconds and rate, follow, leave a review, or even share the episode with a friend. You can also tag me on Instagram. I'm at joyfilleduniverse. All of this helps me out so much, and I'm extra thankful for your support. And yeah, so there we go. I am your host, Lisa Ryan. This is the Joy-Filled Universe podcast, where we explore all the tools and tricks that are going to make your universe even more joyful than it already is. And I will see you next week. Bye.